What does $1 million really buy you if you put it into REITs? Most people picture endless cash flow, freedom from work, maybe instant retirement, but is that actually how it plays out? That's exactly what John is wondering. If he had $1 million, would it cover rent, groceries, and insurance, or would he still be worrying about money? In this video, we're going to put John's $1 million into 5 different REITs, starting with the safest and moving toward the highest paying options. For each one, we'll see 2 things. First, how much it actually pays John every month in dividends, and second, how much his original million would have grown in value over the next year. And in the end, I'll show you the REIT that nearly pays John $100,000 a year in dividends. John's first stop is a REIT that investors often describe as boring in the best way possible. Agree Realty with the ticker symbol ADC. Agree Realty specializes in owning retail properties like grocery stores, pharmacies, and dollar stores, the kind of places people keep shopping at no matter what happens in the economy. And because those tenants usually sign long-term leases, ADC's income stream is about as steady as it gets. ADC pays a dividend yield of 4.31%, and John wants to see what that means. If he puts in $1 million, the dividends would come to about $43,100 a year, or $3,592 per month. At first glance, that doesn't sound too bad. Every single month, John knows a check is coming in, rent money without actually owning a single house or dealing with tenants. But when he lays out a budget, reality sets in. At $3,592 a month, John can cover the essentials: rent, utilities, groceries, maybe a used car payment. But that's about it. Every decision feels heavy. He skips dinners out, ignores hobbies, and pushes off travel. If an unexpected bill lands, the whole system wobbles. He isn't broke, but he's stuck in a routine that feels more like getting by than living. And that's the problem. Technically, John has achieved the dream of living off dividends, but in practice, it feels more like survival mode. He isn't broke, but he isn't free either. It's like being on a permanent budget, enough to keep the lights on, but never enough to relax. On the bright side, ADC isn't just about the dividend. Over the last 10 years, its stock price has also grown by 9.26% on average annually, which means his $1 million wouldn't just sit flat. Over time, it could actually grow while paying him. If that pattern held, John's $1 million would grow into about $1,092,571 over the 12 months, all while paying him steady dividends. For someone who thinks long-term, that's a powerful combination. He could lock in stability today while slowly building wealth for the future. But here's the trade-off: income today versus growth tomorrow. For someone trying to buy freedom right now, $3,592 doesn't stretch far. John starts to notice the psychological weight of living at the edge. Every purchase calculated, every decision second-guessed. He's safe, but he isn't living. Sure, the stability is comforting. ADC is unlikely to surprise him with a dividend cut, but that safety comes with a price, a lifestyle that feels like a strong, well-built house, but with the blinds always drawn, secure, but small. And that leaves John wondering, if this is what safety buys me, what happens if I trade just a little bit of that safety for a little more breathing room? That's when he comes across CubeSmart with the ticker symbol CUBE. It's a self-storage REIT. If you've ever seen rows of orange doors and long hallways lined with rented storage units, that's them. It's not glamorous, but it's one of the most resilient businesses in real estate. Why? Because no matter what happens in the economy, people need extra space. When times are good, they store their toys, gears, and seasonal stuff they don't want to toss. When times are tough, families downsizing and businesses cutting costs still need somewhere to put their belongings. That steady demand makes CubeSmart surprisingly durable. John wants to know what happens when he invests $1 million into Cube. With a dividend yield of 5.13%, he'll be getting about $51,300 a year, or $4,275 every month. This is the first real step up. At $4,275 per month, John can afford a slightly nicer apartment, maybe in a better neighborhood where he feels safer walking at night. He can budget for health insurance without panicking every time premiums go up. He can eat out occasionally or pick up a hobby, maybe a gym membership, guitar lessons, or a cooking class he's always wanted to try. And perhaps most importantly, he can finally save a little each month instead of watching every penny vanish into bills. Life still isn't luxurious, but it feels different. Instead of constantly thinking, "Can I afford this?" John starts asking, "Do I want this?" That mental shift is huge. It's the difference between living cautiously and living with options. But here's the trade-off. While CubeSmart has delivered dividends reliably, its long-term growth hasn't been as strong, growing at roughly 3.88% every year. If the past pattern continued, John's $1 million would only grow into about $1,038,781 by next year. Better than sitting still, but far from life-changing. So John faces a fork in the road. Stick with a dependable business model and enjoy this modest upgrade in comfort, or keep climbing, searching for the REIT that delivers not just stability, but a lifestyle that feels complete. After seeing what CubeSmart can do, John starts to wonder if there's a way to make his income feel even more stable. Quarterly checks are nice, but life doesn't run on quarters. Rent, groceries, utilities, they come due every single month. That's when he discovers Realty Income, with the ticker symbol O, also known as the monthly dividend company. Realty Income is one of the most famous REITs on the market. Its business model is simple but powerful. It owns thousands of commercial properties leased to major retailers, healthcare providers, and logistics companies, businesses that sign long-term contracts to pay rent every single month. And true to its nickname, Realty Income passes those dividends along to shareholders monthly, like a paycheck. Realty Income pays a dividend yield of 5.35%, and John wants to know if that paycheck-like reputation holds up. On $1 million invested, the dividends would amount to about $53,500 a year, or close to $4,458 every month. This is a great start, a solid monthly return from a dependable REIT, but as we climb higher on the ladder of risk and reward, things get a lot more interesting. In fact, some investments pay even more, and by the end, I'll show you the one that gives John nearly $100,000 a year in dividends right away. But back to Realty Income. At $4,458 a month, the number isn't much higher than CubeSmart, but the way it arrives changes everything. The monthly dividend feels like a paycheck, steady and predictable. Suddenly, John isn't budgeting in fits and starts, he's planning ahead. He books a weekend trip months in advance, commits to a language course, and sets up a small automatic savings plan. The routine feels stable, like he's finally living on solid financial ground. But as comforting as it is, Realty Income isn't a magic ticket. Over the last decade, its stock price has grown at just 2.93% annually. If that trend continues, John's $1 million would grow into about $1,029,345 by next year. It's progress, but modest compared to other REITs that he's looked at. And Realty Income comes with its own risks. REITs are sensitive to interest rates. And if borrowing costs rise, property values can drop, dragging the stock price with them. Plus, because it's focused heavily on retail and commercial properties, economic slowdowns could impact tenants as well. Still, for John, this feels like a turning point. For the first time, dividends actually feel like a paycheck, reliable, predictable, manageable. But it made him even more curious to find out if there are even better options. That's when he finds Omega Healthcare Investors with the ticker symbol OHI. OHI is a healthcare REIT that focuses on senior housing and long-term care facilities, businesses like nursing homes and assisted living centers. With an aging population and demand for healthcare that never really slows down, OHI taps into one of the most reliable industries out there. OHI pays a dividend yield of 6.41%, higher than anything John has tried so far. Naturally, he wants to know what that really means in practice. On $1 million invested, that dividend works out to about $64,100 a year, or roughly $5,342 every single month. And this is where life starts to feel very different. At $5,342 per month, John has room to breathe. He can travel occasionally, maybe take a proper vacation once or twice a year. He can afford hobbies without guilt, things like photography gear, music lessons, or even joining a local sports league. His health insurance is covered, his car expenses aren't stressful, and for the first time, he can build meaningful savings on top of his lifestyle. This is the point where John starts to feel not just secure, but flexible. He doesn't have to take every expense so seriously. If something unexpected comes up, a dental bill, a home repair, or a last-minute trip, he can absorb it without panic. This is real freedom, at least in day-to-day terms. On the downside, OHI's growth has been slow. Over the last decade, its stock price has grown at just 1.85% annually. If that pattern continued, John's $1 million would move up to around $1,018,536 by next year. That's barely any appreciation, especially compared to other REITs. But what it lacks in appreciation, it makes up for in dividends. After feeling the comfort of OHI's healthcare income, John wonders what it would look like to push things even further. For the first time, he's starting to believe dividends could give him real independence, but he also knows the higher the yield, the higher the stakes. And that's when he stumbled on Arbor Realty Trust with the ticker symbol ABR. Arbor Realty is different from the other REITs John has looked at so far. Instead of owning grocery stores or healthcare facilities, ABR specializes in mortgage financing, lending money for multifamily and commercial real estate projects. That means its profits don't just come from rent, but from interest on loans, fees, and structured finance. It's a business model with more moving parts, and yes, that means more risk, but it also throws off some of the highest yields in the REIT universe. ABR pays a dividend yield of 9.96%, nearly double what John saw from Realty Income, and far above what most conservative investors would consider normal. Naturally, he wants to know, what does that mean for his $1 million? Well, run the numbers, and here's the answer. A full $1 million invested in ABR would generate about $99,600 a year. That's roughly $8,300 every single month in dividend income. For John, this is the first time income feels truly life-changing. He's no longer choosing between comfort and security. He can have both, a spacious apartment or even a house in most cities. Regular travel, not just once a year, but whenever he feels like it. Premium health insurance without hesitation. Hobbies, luxuries, dinners out, helping family, even starting a passion project, all without stressing over the price tag. And the investment itself doesn't just stand still. Over the past decade, ABR's stock has grown at about 6.67% per year. If that pace continued, John's $1 million would grow into about $1,066,662 by next year. That's more than $66,000 of appreciation on top of the nearly $100,000 in dividends. For the first time, John feels what most people imagine when they dream of passive income: real, unshackled freedom. He could walk away from work tomorrow and not just survive, but thrive. But this isn't a fairy tale. Be warned, ABR's high yield is also a flashing warning sign. Mortgage REITs are notoriously volatile. When interest rates swing, lending margins tighten, and funding costs rise. Profits can shrink fast. Dividend cuts are always a risk in this corner of the market. ABR has navigated storms before, but it is not immune to shocks. That leaves John in a conflicted place. On one hand, $8,300 per month feels like the dream he's been chasing since the experiment started, but on the other hand, he knows that dreams built on fragile foundations can collapse quickly. It's a strange feeling. For the first time, John has everything he thought he wanted: comfort, luxury, freedom, And yet in the back of his mind, a question lingers. What if the very thing that gives me freedom today is the thing that takes it away tomorrow? And that's when John realizes the experiment itself was never just about chasing the highest dividend. It was about figuring out what kind of freedom he can actually trust. So REITs are good, but there's always risk to them. Want to know which index fund can turn John's $1 million into a $2 million portfolio in just 4 years? Click the video on the screen to find out.